Welcome back to the NHS Leadership Series podcast with me, Sam Lai. And this is episode 3, and we're looking at some steps that we can take to move from awareness to action, and what you need to change personally within yourself and then within your system to ensure that your leadership journey and that of your organization is healthy and thriving and not in any way going to hinder your progress or the progress of the patients you serve. Leadership isn't about managing people or ticking boxes. Remember, that's really important. And sometimes we could fall into that trap where leadership becomes something that we end up doing just to um, meet markers and meet levels. Leadership, especially in the health sector, is about making decisions, being able to make decisions, having good moral courage, good ethical practice, and the ability to shape culture and values from within. So they're part of you, and then you're able to take those outside of where you are and into those of your team. Short wins, like I said before, short-term wins and short-term, that's more about performance management. Long-term, it's more about strategy and legacy. But what needs to change is what actionable steps you can take. And we're going to go through 5 or 6 today and see how we get on. So let's start with the first thing that we need to do is about courage. So we talked about courage in the beginning, and courage is something which we often find when the going gets tough, we see less and less of in the NHS. NHS leaders tend to get stuck in the weeds or the reeds of management mode or management code, which can easily turn into a game of spreadsheets, ticking boxes, and, just chasing that kind of metric. And then you forget the people you serve or the people that you're supposed to serve, because the people you serve as a manager are the people who are seeing the patients and seeing the people who use the services. But if you stay in management mode and not in leadership mode, it shows a true lack of courage. You need to step up. You need to make tough decisions, bold calls, even when it's uncomfortable. Leading with moral courage means you're going to take a stand for what is right, even when the system pushes back. So the idea here is not to have this agentic kind of, I don't know if you've read Milgram's work, classic kind of like 101 psychology, where there was a study where he was testing how many people would give an electric shock to another person. Okay, and there was no electric shock, but it was all simulated. And just because people are being instructed to do something, they just do as they're told. Good leaders are able to follow instructions, but good leaders are able to have autonomy or challenge the agency within an organization where things don't seem right. Where they do seem right, fair enough. When they don't seem right, you need to have the moral courage to take a stand for what is right. Like I said to you, even when the system is telling you do something else. Right, let's have a look. So there's an example that comes to mind, a case study from a trust senior, a CEO level person who had a restructuring issue. The directives from senior were to push forward with plans that would have overwhelmed and increased burnout, but the people would have just been lost from where they were. This CEO kind of stood up and said, stop. It's kind of this high level person just said, stop. They questioned the directive when they pushed back, of listening to people on the ground, listening to where people were, and listening to where most many staff would have been in a bad place. If you strip staff back when things are pressured, people are in a bad place. And even the human impact on staff would be too much. But this was a good example of a CEO who could then stagger the change, and then take people along the journey. Doesn't mean you don't have to do things at all, but it means you can change the way that you do things. And bold decisions make people respect you and make you a person who people can respect, and people that understand that you want to respect staff and protect staff. And it sets new precedent. When you do things like that, it sets new precedents in leadership. It allows people further in the organization. We talked about speaking up. If we don't know how to speak up, then we get examples from people like this where they then encourage you to come forward and say things that are not going right. That's what good courage looks like. It's the ability, just this ability just to say, I don't understand this. Sometimes you won't have all the information, and leaders may say to you, well, you don't have all the answers. But as long as you're able to comfortably raise your voice with the information you do have, That's all that's going to be asked of you. If you turn a blind eye or show apathy or show agency to a leader who is just telling you what to do without really communicating the trust's legacy or values or mission statement, then you have a problem. But you as a leader or an emerging leader needs to really, really have the courage to lead properly. Theme 2 is, again, moving a little bit or cross into here, is defining what value means. I talked about in the last point, value and legacy are something that you need to understand in terms of leadership, but you need to redefine what value is. So for a long time, everyone's got these trust values on the wall, and they have these things, and we say them and we repeat them as trust values. But ultimately, when push comes to shove, there are cost savings to be made, there are efficiencies to be made. And you kind of then, as someone who is maybe junior in leadership or someone who's senior, you really find yourself struggling to really see if your organization is actually following its trust values. So you need to really define what trust values are. So let me give you an example. An ICB that flipped the script. Instead of just focusing on cutting costs, they moved their whole thinking from around treatment to around prevention. A certain area was struggling. So yes, there's going to be cuts, but before they implement the cut, they really put a preventative strategy along with their partners in public health to really reduce the pressure on services. So that could be communication, it could be why do you use these services, it could be just the way that healthcare is delivered. If everyone is, for example, turning up to your hospitals because there's a diabetic epidemic, as we're experiencing, or diabetes epidemic, then let's really look at some preventative work in that. Let's not look at big pharma, let's look at big food, and just look at how we reduce the burden of obesity on the health sector. That's what you call long-term legacy planning. And that's what happens. So once you do that, then you start to not feel the burden because there's less pressure on your healthcare frontline. Number 3 is you have to rebuild trust through radical transparency. Trust is something which is not the pinnacle of how you want to run your organization. Psychological safety is, according to theoretical research, you need a place where people are so safe that they can say stuff and not be afraid about it. But the minimum place to be is a place of trust. And a lot of organizations now, because sometimes the leaders don't even know what they're doing, to be fair, because they don't have clear direction, and quarter to quarter things can change. But if you can rebuild trust within your team, that this is a journey and you might be uncertain, but if you can show that what you are asking them to do is in line with the organizational values, is in line with their own personal values, is in line with your own values, that's going to be a really helpful way to build trust. Once the staff feel trusted, then your patients can start trusting your services. So one of the most important things that we can make as leaders, and the key to trust, like I say to you, radical transparency. I've just given you an example of how you can be transparent as a leader. Okay, you have to communicate really clearly and openly, and not be too bothered by what the seniors say. You will rise. The cream always rises to the top. Okay, as long as you are a radical, transparent leader. If you look at, it could be a hospital transformation board or something like that. They make a decision to tell staff about finances every month. A lot of times you ask staff. I've been so many coaching sessions, and staff don't even understand what finance is. But if you took the effort as an organization to explain it, maybe that would help them. And they don't understand why money isn't being spent or what analogies you can give, what happens next. But when you engage staff, they feel included and they can understand why things happened. Transparency doesn't just build trust, it pulls people together. Okay, and you can solve many more problems together. So point 4 is we really have to think about investing in people, not just projects. A lot of the time we find that we've got new ideas, new initiatives, pilots and projects, but really stability is what's key. And it probably links with the third one. So once you can free up some space within your system, rather than inventing new innovative or new ideas, sometimes just bringing people into the organization would be much more beneficial to you. The NHS is under pressure, we know that, and it's tempting to focus solely on hitting KPIs or creating new measures or doing things differently. But if you're not investing in the people, they are going to feel disinvested in your system. They are going to pull away emotionally from your system. And leadership and the development of that mindset of leadership is, it may not be financial. Sometimes it could be your own emotional investment in your staff. It could be developing emotional intelligence in your staff, giving mentorship to the staff, providing growth to them, opportunities. If you have a couple of trusts have approached me and we do coaching for a couple of places, and if they say, right, get all the team leads up to scratch on certain things. We want them to learn how to communicate properly. We want them to learn some skills, organizational skills, as well as empathetic skills. These are the things that you need to be teaching. Once they get that and they swim in these deep oceans, they can provide by proxy. They can provide the same skills to others, as long as you have a fidelity of supervision in that system. That those people can grow, and then the people who are ready to replace them can grow with them. And the result is, not only do you reduce turnover, but those people who you've invested in, they will come forward with the ideas. They will be on the front line. They will be reading the latest research. They will be seeing it, and they will come forward with the ideas. Without any doubt, you will have a system that is much more healthy than just, here's a pilot, let's try it. Here's a pilot, let's try it. And moving on to my last point today, it's about the power of the collective. So leadership is more about a system of people around. So your leadership system is not just one person, but a collective. So you have a leadership team, a leadership management group, an LMG, whatever you want to call it. But this idea of the heroic leader, and sometimes you can, if you're really passionate, people can start to put their trust in you and disengage themselves or disable themselves in that system. And you need to bring everyone along. Leadership is everyone's business, but you need to make it feel like everyone's business. Collaboration is what you need, not super saviors. Leadership is about more than one person. When it becomes about one person, you will find systems that are destined to fail in the next iteration of that system's life after you or someone leaves. So you create a culture where collective decision making is important, and where you get stuck, you do have one or two leaders that can say, right, we're going to have to move one way or other, and those people can make those final decisions. But everyone's voice needs to be heard. That's what the collective is. It's about blind spots. So if you understand this, if you understand nothing else, when you understand this, is there's a study that says when you have groupthink, organizations tend to fail months or even to a short few years after groupthink with an organization. So if you have this in your organization, you need to get rid of it. And the whole purpose of collective leadership is to have diverse thought, challenge, disruption in that leadership, and then everyone understands together. If you go to a leadership group and everyone's saying the same thing, then you have a toxic culture there. You already have what we talked about in Milgram's experiment, perhaps agency from the organization, and everyone's just doing as they're told, which is very dangerous. So make sure that you follow and share this if you can. But to summarize, you need to lead with change, with courage, and not just manage. Understand what value means to you in your organization, your values. Be transparent so you can actually get authentic trust back in your organization. Invest time, money, empathy into people, not projects, and understand that collective leadership means, as a family you can row, as a family you can not get on, but as a family you are going to come to a decision and move forward together. And this kind of change isn't very easy, and we teach it a lot in the coaching sessions that we do. And some leaders thrive in it, others it's not for them, and that's okay. But the ones who thrive are the ones who succeed and the ones who make great changes in the NHS. It's time to stop waiting for others to fix things and start leading yourselves. If you're watching this or you're listening to this, then you change yourselves. What is your next step? What can you do? How can you set yourself some serious goals to make sure that you become a better leader? Not today, but this minute and this hour, not tomorrow. What can you do now? Tom Peters says excellence is what you do in the next 5 minutes. And that's what you need to do. So listening to this podcast is a great start. But you need to kind of really think about where you want to go next. Thanks for watching this. This is episode 3. of the leadership theory. So don't forget to share this with other colleagues who might want to watch, may benefit from this. And we hope to see you in the next episode. Take care. Thanks a lot.